I'm Christian Chiller. I do a lot of technical documentation, technical blogs, I build websites, I make extensions, I even build a few small apps. So I spend a lot of time in text editors and IDEs. I would imagine that a lot of you watching are quite similar. They are the windows to our world. I was a big fan of Atom for some time. That is long gone. And for the past few years, I have mostly been in the VS Code world, also even maintaining a handful of small extensions for it too. But I think, much like me, you're also aware that there are other options out there. There are some new entries, there are some older entries that maybe you haven't looked at for some time. So I thought in this video, I will take a look at some of the text editors and IDEs that keep popping up on my radar and evaluate them and see what I think. If you enjoy this video, please leave a comment. Please tell me what you are using or what you're thinking of using after this. Please, of course, thumbs up, share, subscribe, all those usual things that YouTubers ask you to do. And if none of those work for you, you can head on over to christianchiller.com and find more ways to support me and more about my work. With all of that out of the way, how am I going to evaluate these text editors and IDEs? I'm going to look at a few things. I'm running on a Mac, so I'm going to look at a couple that are Mac only and a few that are cross-platform. And there's reasons for this because one of the first things I'm going to look at is how it is built. Is it cross-platform using web technologies? Is it a native build? That kind of thing. And then thus the impact on performance of that architecture and programming language choice. I'm going to take a look at some of the settings. Specifically for me, I have quite bad eyesight. I tend to increase the font size quite a bit. And you'd be surprised, not every tool lets you do that. I will also look at the features and functionality and language support it has built in, and also any kind of extensions, community, and marketplace it has around it. And as part of that, if it supports LSP, Language Server Protocol, which gives other options. And this is actually made by VS Code for extending these tools too. And then finally, I will look at cost. We have possibly got used to thinking that text editors are free. Not all are, and especially in the IDE. Not all are, and especially in the IDE world, then you generally have to start paying. So I look at how much they are and whether that may or may not be worth it to me. And for example projects, I am going to use my website, which is a mixture of Astro and Markdown. I am going to use a documentation site for a project I'm working on, which is Docusaurus plus some Markdown and MDX. I'm also going to use a monorepo that I currently work on that has a mixture of documentation, Rust, and all sorts of other things in it. And I am also going to confuse many of the tools by also using an ASCII doc project, just to see how they handle them and how they support them. Okay, that was a lot of pre-ramble. Let's get started. This is CodeEdit. I have covered CodeEdit separately. It is another macOS-only native application. It looks an awful lot like Xcode, which I think is intentional, but is generic. Xcode is mostly aimed at Swift and Objective-C, as you can see here. Very native. It's in Swift. It is open source, so if that's important to you, here we go. Quite active as well. I've been keeping an eye on it for some time. I'm even in the Discord server. And despite the activity, there's still a lot it doesn't support. So let's jump in. I have Activity Monitor here, but I don't think I really need to keep an eye on it. It's a macOS native. It's not going to have a massive amount of CPU usage. So for example, here I have Markdown files. This is in the Docusaurus website. If I open up the JavaScript, then it's recognized. If I open up the Markdown, then it is not recognized. I also don't see a way to set what it is. There is a command palette. There's not much in it either. So I don't see any way to set that. Markdown, to me, feels like a fairly big essential. It does have very good GitHub support, as you can see. Version control here, I can jump right into the various commits and equally into the overall Git history here. So that's actually very nice. That's all on that side. We also have split view here, inbuilt terminal where I can do all sorts of other things. Debug, I'm not running anything right now, no output. I cannot set the file, which is slightly annoying. Not having Markdown is a big negative for me, which is a shame because the interface is great. There is an extensions window, but as far as I can tell, no way of actually adding any. So I think that's coming later. With regard to settings, it again has a relatively native view using the more modern macOS settings view. It's actually interesting. You don't see many applications doing this, but we can see a whole bunch of different ways we can change the interface, issues with the code, CLI integration, version control accounts, themes, of course, text editing, which is where I went and changed all the things that were important to me, inbuilt terminal, the search, the source control options, locations for various things. And this is interesting. There is actually an extensions path as well. And then feature flags, which only has one thing at the moment. So it's really nice. I just wish it would let me change the language. Here's the ASCII doc, again, not supported. Dart is supported, but again, I don't see a way of saying that it's Dart. I mean, it seems to have detected it, but yep, here's TypeScript. So let's have a look and see if we get any kind of auto-completion. No, not really. So there's no kind of auto-completion here. Not a tremendous amount has changed since I last looked, which is a shame. I really like it. I love just a very native view, but it's still missing quite a lot, which I think more than anything, this is not really a criticism of the project itself. It's fully open source, a very active community. The lead developer is very passionate. It just shows you actually that you think a text editor is simple. It's really not. So I'd be interested to know what they're planning to do moving forward, because I think there's a lot of things that they need to implement for people to really want to use it. But it is completely free. You can also jump into GitHub and see a lot of the other components they use. It's a big community, as you can see. Even have sponsors. So some of the aspects here, for example, is kind of interesting. So again, if you want to see how you could start making a more fully featured text editor, then it's there. There's a lot to learn from it, I think. But in the meantime, I will keep an eye on it. I was hoping it would have got further than last time I looked, but it's still going, still buzzing along. They're releasing regularly. And I like the fact it exists, even if it's not quite ready for prime time yet. Next is Chime, another open source editor, but getting a little bit into IDE territory. Looks pretty nice. macOS native, minimal, very nice. Language server protocol. And this means that there can be extensions, as we already covered in this video. Easier, anyway. I don't know if there's any kind of documentation telling you how to do that, because trust me, it's not as easy as it may come across, but we have extensions, editor config. Let's have a look if there's any instructions there. Oh, here we go. So there's actually a kit you use. Chime's extensions are based on Extension Kit. I have never heard of that. Swift and Swift UI. Interesting. It's going to make it a little bit of a challenge, but it would mean that they'll be very performant, I suppose. It puts things in a bit of a niche there, but there we go. All right. Well, it's something I want to look at later, I think. Let's jump in to the editor then. So settings, a little bit of a differentiation between the theme here. It's not letting me pick the theme yet. I'm probably about to get to it. Yeah, you kind of have to set it manually by the looks of it, but there's some interesting ones. I'll go for that for now. Editing. Doesn't appear that I can change text sizes, which is a big issue for me. Command line tool and extensions. Oh, here we go. So even a lot of the ones that come with it are extensions themselves. Okay. Well, let's open something first. I'm not sure if there's going to be Dart support or Astro, but let's have a look at JSON first. So here we go. Well, there's some weird sort of rendering here. I don't know if it comes across on the video, but maybe I'll change the theme back. Let's do this one. It's still, I find this quite fuzzy. And this for me is way too hard to see, and I can't change it. So this is a bit of a deal breaker for me, to be honest with you. Not being able to change the font size, which is a shame because there's a lot of other nice things here. Transformations, no. I can't even zoom in. All right, well, let's carry on, but I'm struggling a little. Show semantic details. I don't know if this relates to like AST or something. Well, that wasn't going to work. Okay, let's find a language it's more familiar with. Okay, here we go. Let's start here. Semantic details. This doesn't really seem to be doing anything. This semantic details, I'm not entirely sure what it even means, in all honesty. Okay, all right, fine. So how do I add extensions? That was a little unclear to me. Let's see. So you consider it non-functional. I also see this. Let's see what version I have, actually. I have the older version. I wonder if it's worth trying this one just in case. I installed this with Homebrew, which must give me the closed source version. I'll come back and let's switch to that. So this is the beta version. It's actually massively different. Still can't add extensions, though. Maybe the extensions all kind of come bundled. Maybe that's the thing. I might open a Swift application then. Let's do that out of interest. I have one that doesn't do very much right now, but I can open it. The rendering is actually much clearer here, but I still see no way to change. Maybe here. There we go. This has now been added. So that's a bonus. Yeah, so I could carry on messing with that. That's kind of weird. I could make my code underlined. I suppose do what you like. But there's some interesting ideas here. It's just not quite there. And it obviously admits to that itself. But I like kind of the basics of it, leveraging a lot of the default Apple frameworks and then adding more to that. Interesting beginnings, I think. Next is the turn of JetBrains Fleet. This has been in preview for a little while. It's hard to say exactly what it's aimed at. I think a sort of simplified version of IntelliJ, maybe. A little bit of a VS Code alternative, maybe. As with any JetBrains application, it's native-ish. It runs fairly performant, but it's not fully platform native. It does have language servers. It has its inbuilt code engine, as you can see here. But it's pretty lean and stripped back. I sort of quite like it. So I'll probably spend a little bit of time on this as well. Also, of course, with AI. No plugins yet, though. But I would assume that because IntelliJ has a big plugin ecosystem, that will come eventually. So let's have a look at it. We'll jump into the settings first. We can see the appearances here. We'll go, whoa, that is maybe even a bit too bright even for me, but it'll do for now. Let's increase that font size. We go. Soft wraps. I like soft wraps. I will probably do for now. Okay. This is also a very VS Code style way of doing things, that everything is kind of just a tab in this part of the interface. So let's begin with my website. This probably will not work then because it's Astro, which I would imagine would need an extension. Let's see JSON, no issue. But the Astro, not recognized. Retrieving IntelliJ. That's a strange statement. But beyond that, we obviously get search, Git, history, etc. It's probably worth having a quick look at performance, as it's not fully native. Well, this is intriguing. Verifying Fleet backend. So it's about 8% at the moment, but it's probably because it's downloading and indexing things. It's really jumping up. I mean, there's a lot in this project, actually, so we'll let it settle a bit. Although it's not really going to work, of course, so we could probably close it almost immediately. But let's have a look maybe at some other aspects whilst we're just here. For example, the markdown would be helpful. Yep, so that's interesting. Even the markdown isn't fully supported, which is surprising. I would have thought markdown would be supported. Let's see. And this is sort of... It's actually picked up MDX, though, interestingly. Let's try a markdown one. There we go. So we actually get a preview now as well. but it's not picking up the front matter, which is odd. And of course, I don't think there's going to be anything we can change. No, because there is no markdown extension at the moment, I suppose. And that takes us to this. Oh, we can actually... Well, that's odd. So it says plugins coming soon, but there are plugins. So, okay. All right, fine. And that is already there by just editing. No Astro. There's no Dart either. So there's a limited. I guess that's just, what's included. Yeah, so here you can see here. So what shall I try? Also no ASCII doc. This rules out a lot of my test projects. Let's do this React application then. What is these dots? This is the command palette. That's nice. Okay, I'll try that AI thing in a moment. So here's the JavaScript. This might be a good opportunity to see what kind of performance hit we're getting now. Still quite high, but that other project is open in the background, so maybe we should close that. There we go. Let's see. Still fairly heavy. Getting some things underlined here. Unresolved variable. We're also seeing some code. I don't know what they call this exactly, but sort of hinting, maybe. So at least it has an idea of the code. Some of the others I've looked at here, it didn't seem to really have any understanding of how the code connected. Quick fixes. Yeah, we could do that. I won't right now. And a var here. Yeah, okay. Let's try some of the AI stuff. Is it that? Smart mode. It's already smart. It doesn't seem to be any kind of free option that I could enable anyway. So hard to test this. There's not a tremendous amount I could do at the moment. Do we have like run configurations? Yeah. So we can use npm scripts here. So that's quite nice as well. So if we do a start, for example, command not found, I guess I need to install the dependencies. Is there a way to do that? Okay, there we go. That's what we want. I mean, there are some nice features here, but it is still in preview. I will say that JetBrains tends to have their things in preview for quite a long time. So it's always hard to know quite what the plan is. I like this, so we can do this now as well. The little play buttons. So let's build it. Okay. If we start it, will Fleet just sort of open it up and it goes to the browser? I mean, that's reasonable. I don't know if this is actually really going to work. It's been a long time since I looked. So I think that's all I can really test with the support it has. I do have a Kotlin application, which could be, it's not a fair comparison, of course, because I didn't do that on any of the others, but I do have one. Here's a Kotlin multi-platform example, which really should be where it works the best, I suppose. We have our README again. Don't know why I'm really bothering to look at that, but we have it. Gradle here. You're getting a bunch of things that will probably not work, but that's good in some respects. I didn't have to actually kind of go and do that manually, but I think it works fairly well here. Maybe this is what it's aimed at, to try to get a sort of easier use case, in an easier entry point for Kotlin multi-platform. Who knows? There's a lot going on here. I'm learning Kotlin slowly, but I don't know it so well. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we could do here. Let's have another look at the performance. It's probably written in Kotlin multi-platform, actually. Still quite high on the CPU, actually. But it is doing a lot of downloading and installing here. But maybe a little too early to test, like a few of the others here. But in general, it's an interesting start. I kind of stripped down, free at the moment anyway, version of IntelliJ tools. It's a little early to tell. But I like the feel of it. I like the look of it as a comparison to the full IntelliJ. But I think I have to wait and see when there's a bit more of that extension support. And I'm kind of intrigued to know what they will do. This is Nova from Panic. I have looked at this before. 11.9 is the version now. Cool graphic. It's native, but has a weird kind of native look. It's got a lot of customizations to it. Extensions now, settings, a lot of other things. I will come back to this page in a minute and have a quick whip round. I'm not going to spend too long in Activity Monitor because it is native. Ironically, the thing that's the highest consumer at the moment is actually the website, not the rest of it. But there's a few other sort of windows here. some of this relating to extensions and like the preview features. Let's jump in. So this is a React project. Things like this, I'm always a little unclear how you create setup steps. Whereas in VS Code, you can do things like just kind of run the node script, for example. But we have a README. There's a lot of nice stacking of things like this. There's also some autocomplete. So if I start typing there, I get a little pop-up. Same with creating things like links and images and even probably, I don't know, like if I wanted to format the text, for example, bold worked. Italics, yeah, that works too. All that kind of thing. Code, let's see. We, interestingly, don't get autocomplete there, but it does format it correctly there. So that's good. There is a command palette here. Not a tremendous amount in it. You kind of need to know what you're looking for. You could also change the format down here. Let's have a quick look at what's supported. Yeah, some of these I added through extensions, which I'll get to soon, but it's not a massive amount. And here is the preview. There's a lot of different things you can do. That's a split, so it's more like split view, but we also have preview over here as well. So it has this inbuilt kind of web browser. When it does it, you can change between light and dark. You can lock focus. Not completely sure what that means. And we could also, let's see some of the other things. This could get quite complicated quite quickly. So we could have a whole file browser. It gets messy quite quickly. I wouldn't mind closing some of these. And also up here is a separate preview tab and even different layouts for the sidebar. And this thing here, which seems to be just another way of getting... Oh, it's a new, it's a plus. That's a plus icon. I thought it was a star. Okay, and inside some code, this is package.json. Doesn't do a tremendous amount of auto-completing. It does some bracket matching. This, and in the JavaScript, it does have a couple of things here. So we can do things like it recognizes functions created elsewhere and also different methods and properties and things like this from, I'm assuming, just the base language. I'm not seeing anything else. We also get little snippets. Again, I assume this is just going to be in JavaScript. I was experimenting earlier with doing things like promise, but you instead get, I guess this is a type maybe. I was hoping I would get like a promise snippet, but seemingly not. And we do have bracket matching again here, like this. Lots of flashy little animations. So far, so good. You can create tasks. I struggled a little bit to understand how to set them up. They're relatively complex. I will show you them. They're all defined in this project settings pane. Here, yeah, you can add build and run tasks here, for example. This whole remote task thing as well, it has a little bit of reminds me a little bit of some of the older IDEs and text editors I would use where you'd have to run things on a server instead of running them locally. Let's have a look at the sidebar here. So we do have these remote destinations. So like FTPing your code is not something we do a massive amount anymore, but it's possible here. Searching, hierarchy, which you can see here. Not sure what this does. Different levels. Cool. This little star is clips. I think this is sort of custom snippets of some description that you can then trigger, which is quite nice, and placeholders. So you could set your own little shortcuts for creating custom code, I guess. So global, project, and ones provided by extensions, which you can see here. So markdown. So this is what we got earlier. So you could, I'm assuming, maybe customize them. No, you can't. It's set from the extension. Here we have the whole Git process. You've been seeing this in line as well. We can switch between the branches and that kind of thing. We have a destination to publish. It's kind of intriguing. Again, this is a little bit like the non-version control way of doing things. It's kind of a style of creating projects that I'm so unused to. I've almost forgotten how to do it. And here we have other panes provided by extensions. So for example, Docker. This is also weird, like this really old school looking toggle here, which is like from Cocoa era of macOS. But we can attach to them stock containers, tail logs, that kind of thing. Let's have a quick look in the settings. It's another sort of native-esque interface. It's interesting because different settings panes in macOS use different things. Some use this like squares and then tabs. Some use what we saw in CodeEdit. Others use what we saw in Cot. It's interesting how they're all a bit different, but there's a lot of nice settings here. Rainbow brackets, bracket matching, mini maps, invisibles. Oh, I like having invisibles on. Editing, indentation. Actually, this is a nice feature as well. We can use editor config, indentation, Vim enabling, and extensions. So let's have a look at the extensions. The extensions, there's a few of them now. So I added Astro and Dart. So let's actually switch to an Astro project. Here we go. So it's now recognized the syntax, picked it up as Astro. Astro has some weird sort of syntax. So I don't know how much of this it's going to do autocomplete for. Let's see. So something like site. Yeah, it's picked that up. Dot. Yes, it is getting it actually. So this is coming from a config file, although it now seems to have stopped. I know there's more levels there, but it was a good start. It also has Dart, so I've changed this project to my Flutter project, which is not quite Dart, but let's have a look. Let's see what kind of... It's not giving us autocomplete though, interestingly. It's an extension, so it will depend a little bit on how that was created, I suppose. Let's have a quick look at aforementioned extensions. So yeah, we can see some of the options here and a broader page. Beautified Docker, we saw that one. Text tools, all sorts of interesting ones there. Rust as well, I enabled that because I do have a Rust project. Copilot, so a lot of them, people have been making them. And the API, I was speaking with someone about this. It's a JavaScript API, so they followed that kind of methodology. It'd be interesting if it followed the same API and SDK as VS Code, and then you could just pull in from that, but maybe there's a reason you can't do that. I don't know. Some sort of legal reason. But yes, there's a fair bit here. Still it's a bit cumbersome in some places, and the interface is a little cluttered in some places. But it's nice to have that alternative. Let's have a look at the price. So $99 plus tax with 1 year of updates. And then another $50 plus tax. Now, the interesting thing is I've had this conversation with a couple of people actually. One of the others that I'll look at in this video, in that people have got used to not paying for text editors. So when you ask someone to pay now, they think it's expensive. And $99 seems to be an average amount for a text editor, actually. But people are just not expected to pay for it. Like you could get a lot of it for free in other tools. So is it worth it? Hard to say. Some of the others we will look at have similar prices. So it seems to be a price bracket that people are happy with, and someone must be paying for it. Otherwise, people would continue to make it. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about that. But yeah, there's a lot here. There's a lot more I didn't really get to because there's a fair bit here, and I don't want to spend too much time just on one of them. But you can see there's a lot here. Yeah. Interesting project. It's one I think I would dive into a bit more and try some more of the extensions and see how well they're maintained. The other interesting thing with the extensions, of course, is say something like VS Code. People have an open source community around them. There is one here. So here we go. So we can actually go and contribute to this if we wanted to. So that's good, at least. Yeah. Cool. That is Nova from Panic. This is CotEditor. It's a plain text editor available at CotEditor.com. It's not immediately obvious because all you see is the Mac App Store link, but it is also actually open source. It's on GitHub here. It's macOS only, so we can see that it is written in Swift, so macOS-native, so should be fairly performant. It is really just a text editor, and I say this because you can't actually open a folder, which sort of sets it apart and not as useful as something like VS Code. So if I try and open a folder, you just get into the folder. Although I can open multiple files, but it will just open different windows. So it's not really something you can use for projects, but it is something you can use for individual files. If I take a look at the settings, we can change the font size, which just uses the sort of macOS default way of doing this, which is kind of nice. I have to have things quite large. And line height I like. So it's a bit bigger here. There's actually quite a lot of settings we can do here, which is pretty nice. It respects a lot of system level functionality. It's a shame it doesn't really work as a project text editor just for individual files. But if you want something to replace TextEdit or something like that, it's kind of perfect. Performance-wise, it's not doing a great deal, so the performance should be reasonably good. We don't really get auto-completion. We do get bracket completion, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's basically about it. So it's not going to be doing a great deal, so the performance has got to be reasonably good. It has pretty good support for different languages built in. I won't bother actually opening up any other projects because we can't do a great deal with them. But as a text editor, it has a lot of quite nice features like transformations. It's written, I think, by a Japanese programmer, so there's a lot around Unicode as well, which makes a lot of sense, a lot of line manipulation, trimming white space and all that kind of thing. It does have snippets you can create. There isn't an extensions marketplace, but it does actually have these Apple scripts you can add, which is interesting. And different syntax styles you can also add for formatting, basically, code formatting. And also different themes as well here. So all in all, pretty nice. It's free, it's open source. So it's possibly a good project to learn how you might construct something like a text editor. But it's not really designed for that text editor IDE intersection. But as a text editor, pretty nice. Now it's the turn of Cursor, the only editor that claims to be fully based around AI, but I would hope it would do a bit more than that. Of course, we'll see, I suppose. I get the impression it might use some underpinnings of VS Code for a handful of different reasons. Firstly, the interface looks similar-ish. Also, it has a lot of importing and getting started from VS Code. And secondly, it is not native. It is using, under the hood here, Electron or whatever it happens to be, but it's a web application. So it's not going to be as performant either. Let's actually open that up and see. There we go. You can already see it's a lot heavier and all the helpers, which is a sure sign of a web application. It also has pricing plans. It jumps up quite a bit. 0 to 20 a month is a fair bit, but you get things for that. I suppose it's because it includes the requests, which you could pay for separately yourself. So, yeah, makes sense to me. Yeah, I think we'll keep it as it is for now. Interesting. Why not? Okay, not sure what it is, but sure. Okay. Sure. Do I have to? Fine. Okay, I'll do this and get back to you. So effectively what we have here is VS Codium, I would imagine, with some AI stuff built in. This is also like Copilot, I suppose. Turn off Cursor tab, but yeah. Also saw this thing here. So the main difference is you get to pick the model. So let's try this. Now, I'm not sure if typing that actually was quicker than just doing it myself, but I didn't actually ask for these headings, but sure. Why not? That's fine. Chat. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's reasonable. I feel like the summary is almost as long as the actual text, but that's fine. Let's jump into something a bit more interesting. Okay. So this is Astro. It may not recognize it, although it should have the Astro extension added if it imported. Let's see. No, oddly. Well, in theory, we should better add it. Okay. So now, where was I? This one. So this is Claude. Now this is interesting here. You have to be a little bit careful here. I will try this code-based one in a moment. Yep. And this is pretty reasonable, actually. Let's try the whole code base. Okay. So it probably needs to do some generating first. I'm being intentionally vague. I mean, it's not wrong. Still only 25% as well. No real indication of progress on that. Maybe we'll come back to that in a second. Let's try generating. What I will do is, so here is generally where you change things. Let's see. That's, so I have this elsewhere, and this is sort of what it does, actually. I'm not sure if that's completely accurate, but it's fairly close. Let me find where I have it. Yeah, here. So it's, I mean, I didn't specify anything. I suppose I should have, if I'd said the property maybe. But you can see it's, oh no, it actually has got it. There we go. There's actually a different way of formatting it, but it's largely correct. So this is the React version of a project I have. It's kind of interesting because you get this very practical response. I mean, that is what it's doing. I mean, I can't really start getting philosophical with an AI, I suppose, but yeah. I mean, because that is interesting, it's hard to say whether it's really different from VS Code. And I would imagine that there are plugins to VS Code that do this, I guess. Let's see if it's actually available as an extension in itself. Yeah, here we go. That's why they specify it there. Why not? So, yeah, I don't know if you could really consider it as an alternative, but it's interesting. Even though it's not exactly a new alternative, we should probably have a quick look at macOS-specific tools like BBEdit. It existed for some time. How it compares to things like VS Code, I'm not sure. It's existed for 30 years. Version 15 has AI, of course, and a lot of other new features. I will look at some of them and sort of specifically around the things I was interested in. So a whole bunch of settings here, AI aspects here, which I will look at shortly, and how to change the text. It basically uses the macOS font picker. Languages you can add. This is programming languages and a whole bunch more. Let's see. I mean, JavaScript is fine. There it is. And also things like structure of them here. There we go. I can't seem to figure out how to change the line spacing, which is something I generally like as well. BBEdit is infamous for a lot of its text transformations, which you can see all sorts of things here that you can apply to more than one document at once using, a whole bunch of different options and then customizations that you save as your own factory, as it calls it. Also, any Unix commands that you may want to run through the command line, like grep and things like that. Case changing, shifting, line breaks, hard wraps, quotes, line numbers, sorting, which is kind of interesting, gremlins, whatever that may mean, and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, there's a lot here. This is sort of where a lot of people have used BBEdit for some time. This sort of puts it more into the text editor world than maybe an IDE world, but that is what it calls itself, so that seems fairly reasonable, I guess. If we look at this markup menu, it's mostly HTML. This is another area that it kind of excels in, is HTML. And also there is a degree of markers. It's not really debugging or running, but there is a debugger here. I'm not sure what it's compatible with. I'm not seeing anything. Git, of course, Apple scripts, clippings, which are little things you can save to make using regular snippets of text quicker, snippets in VS Code. And yeah, you could save one, of course, here. Yeah, there we go. And even organize them. Let's see if it supports something like ASCII doc. I don't think so, but we'll have a look. Doesn't seem to. But this is using ADoc Studio's weird custom format, but no, I don't see it here as an option. So no. I doubt it will support MDX. Let's see, no, just Markdown. What else was on my test list? Flutter, I don't think so. I mean, I'm not sure if people have added support. No Dart either. Fortran though. An Object Pascal, Perforce, so it sort of shows some of the veteran status of the program in some respects. One of the others was this cheat sheet. So again, you can sort of see BBEdit's history in bringing, I guess, a lot of Unix and Linux type text editing features to the Mac. Many of these would be available in other places now. Let's go back to this. And so cheat sheets, Markdown, there we go. Kind of just adding things as we go there. You can, of course, create your own and add them. Unix worksheets, whole bunch of them here. And worksheets are kind of like terminals. So it's a bit like Jupyter Notebooks, that kind of thing. So in theory, I think that's my weird custom terminal. For the AI features, you use this same worksheet concept. You create, no matter what you have selected, you create a new ChatGPT worksheet. Make sure you have whatever you want selected and running. I have a llama running locally. And in theory, you hit Control plus Enter, wait. You can see down here, there is this little spinning loader there. I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. And I was running that locally, so of course it took a little bit longer, kicked up my CPU, but you can see here. And we could carry on from there. How about... This is actually kind of useful, especially for something like a llama, which you don't really have as direct interface to these underlying models that you have running locally. It kind of gives a nice interface to it. And yeah, you can keep prototyping and then copy and paste into other editors a bit like a Jupyter Notebook. It's sort of an interesting idea. So whilst BBEdit lacks features in some of the other spaces that I've been looking at, it offers other features that none of the others have by default, which is interesting. Now, you can actually add a little bit more smarts to BBEdit with language server protocol support, which is something I mentioned that I wanted to analyze. It's a little bit of a fiddle to set up. You need to pay attention to a few things, specifically this page, which is not how my terminal is set up. So I had to do a bit of reconfiguring, and something I will look into in the long run. And there's also this page that shows you some of the language servers you might need to install. Unlike some of the other tools, it won't do it for you by default. I'm sort of undecided if that's good or bad. And then you can come to the language settings here and see that it is working for TypeScript in this particular case. So here is a TypeScript file, ironically one where I am actually working on a language server implementation for a VS Code plugin. And you should be able to do, I've got to find something that isn't too specific to VS Code. Come up to here and do show symbol help. And there we go. Then you get responses from the language server. So you can add some other interesting things through that process. And whilst BBEdit doesn't really have an explicit extensions or plugin architecture, you can do a lot through language servers, and then it's actually more extensible in some respects. That's kind of an interesting approach. That said, there are ways to extend BBEdit through things like clippings, scripts, and language modules, so it combines them all together and puts the files in multiple different places. So again, it's a different approach, but it's an interesting one. It allows for a little bit more flexibility maybe, and you start to really see some interesting ways you could use it actually. So Pandoc, I don't know how old this page is. No, it's this year. So it's not really plugins, it's ways of grouping together various extensions to make a plugin. And of course, there's many more ways besides. So it takes some very interesting different approaches with the way you can use and extend it. And of course, it is very native. I mean, I have a language server running and a bunch of other things. Let's have a look at the CPU. I doubt it's going to be very much. So we have a few things here doing a bunch of different extras, but it's less than 2%. I mean, I'm not doing a great deal. And I'm not 100% sure how you can do things like running code. That would be something I'd have to look into, but it is probably possible through the kind of preview extension, I guess. But it's a tool that has managed to remain sort of old school in some ways, but add some interesting modernizations through the kind of Jupyter Notebook style worksheets and the language servers and things like that. And as you can see, it is around $60 depending on the path you take. So it's sort of between 50 and 100 seems to be the standard price for a text editor. And that was my somewhat epic look at alternative text editors for macOS. I know I've missed some. There's obviously some of the classics I also missed, things like MacVim and various permutations of those more traditional old school text editors and IDEs as well. There's also some browser-based ones I didn't look at kind of on purpose. But what are my conclusions? What do I like from what I saw? Well, I am quite entrenched, as are many others, in VS Code. It's pretty hard to switch away from it, as much as sometimes it sort of annoys me. I really liked some of what I saw in BBEdit. I'm kind of contemplating that maybe as a second editor, and it feels strange to say that about something that is, well, it is 30 years old and still a classic for a reason, I suppose. I think it would require a little bit of setup and configuration to get those language servers working so it would be more useful in addition to just being a text editor. But for the more basic text editing on top of actual writing tools, it's got some really interesting ideas in there and combines a lot of things that I'm using in other places. Some of the smaller open source projects look interesting, but as I think I found out in a couple of the tools that I looked at, it takes a while to make a text editor. You can see that things like VS Code and Nova, coming from a company with a development team, they're far more developed, far more along the way, and have plugin ecosystems than some of the ones like CodeEdit and Cot, for example. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to change a massive amount. I enjoyed looking through the options and seeing what else is out there. And if there's anything I missed, and I'm sure there are, even though I looked fairly broadly, please do let me know in the comments. And just above those comments, you can also find the variety of buttons to click, to support, to share, to subscribe, to like, to leave a tip, that kind of thing. I have been Chris Chinchilla. You can find more about me at chrischinchilla.com. Thank you very much for joining me. And as always, take care, everybody.